Welcome back, everybody. Friday, January 20th. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report. Here to talk about the latest from Ukraine, actually from Washington, D.C., but about Ukraine. Let me get our TikTok friends going here. And as always, if you guys want to start introducing yourselves and where you're from, that'd be nice. There we go. TikTok is rolling in slowly. Anyway, how are things going? Yeah, Germany. Yeah, Germany was great today. We're gonna be talking about Germany today. Hey, TikTokers. Oh my, yes, lovely day. Newfoundland. I keep forgetting you're in the Czech Republic, copies. I don't know why. Sorry. Oh, Otan. Hey, TikTokers. Hello, all. Ah, so how are things doing? Actually, TikTokers, why don't you guys say where you are hailing from as well? We got the YouTubers doing it already. Thank you, Great CFI, for the gift already. Yasu, hasta toda. Oh, hasta toda. Not sure what that is. Thank you, Caden, for that. It is Friday. I know. Friday. Woo. Although working on your own, it's always a little weird having weekends because it simply means you don't get paid. Gothenburg. Nice. I've been to Gothenburg during the Swedish prime minister race back in 2010. Oh, thank you, Egram Graham, for that. All right. I'm almost ready to start my introductions, I think. Yeah, we got a pretty good group here. All right, guys. I think we got pretty good critical mass. Let me get rolling. So, welcome, everybody. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. This is my nightly show, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., where I talk to you about the latest news from Ukraine, summarize it for you. Ooh, thank you, Annie. That was very sweet of you. Thank you so much for that. And then the second half of the show, I take your guys' questions. You can always start submitting questions now if you want. There's no harm in doing that. On TikTok, you can submit them via the Q&A link that is in my profile. Go there. I can't get to all of them, but I'll try to get to as many as I can. On YouTube, etc., use the comment box at the bottom. As always, I very much appreciate your guys' gifts. I am doing this for free. I've been doing it full time since the war broke out in February, and your gifts quite literally help me pay the bills and keep going. Thank you, Purnell, just like what Purnell did on TikTok there. So I will always, thank you, Inspired Woman. I will always try to do a shout out when I see your guys' gifts, whether it's the gifts on TikTok or the super chat questions, super stickers like I'm getting right now on YouTube. And finally, super chat questions. I will always get to those next when you guys post them, so I don't mind getting to those soon. All right, let's get rolling, guys. So it is Friday, January 20th. The big news of the day, big surprise, is tanks, right? We're all about tanks. No big news on that. I mean, not no big news, depressing news today on that front. So, the issue has been that, I mean, a lot of stuff going on here. The Ukrainians have been getting a lot of great weapons from the West. No one's knocking that. But, you know, and it's funny because I find sometimes the critics, although the critics of Ukraine tend not to be in good faith, I find you don't find a lot of people. I'm fine with people being good faith critics, asking, hey, we've given a lot of money. Do they, why do they need more? That kind of stuff, right? I appreciate that. And one of the things I sort of try to tell people is, again, if you're being a good faith critic, I appreciate that. Just because we've given X amount of money doesn't mean it's enough to win a war, right? Wars are not won by a lot of money, right? So hey, we gave Ukraine a lot of money. Now, of course, most of it isn't money. We've given Ukraine a lot of military aid. Just because you give them a lot of weapons doesn't mean it's enough weapons. And especially now that we're entering a new phase of the war where there's real concern about the Russians launching some kind of major attack against Ukraine come this spring, the Ukrainians are going to need more weapons than ever and better weapons than ever, including tanks, to take on the Russians. Now, everyone agrees on this. It's pretty much well agreed. The issue here with tanks in Ukraine and Germany is that the debate's been going on over who will provide what tanks to Ukraine. What country will provide them? Which tanks will we provide? Okay, and again, fair questions to ask. I'm fine with that. There was a lot of talk in the last several months about the German Leopard 2 tanks, which generally speaking, a lot of the defense folks feel are probably the best tanks for Ukraine. They are fast, they are good tanks, they use diesel fuel. The American, actually, I forgot about this and I just read it before I came on with you guys because it's an important point. The American Abrams tanks, thank you, Jesse, for the gift there. The American Abrams tanks use jet fuel. Jet fuel. They don't even use, oops. Oh, I have you guys plugged in. Am I, just make sure, am I still echoing on TikTok? If so, I can unplug the mic and go to the other mic. Just let me know if it is for anybody else there. But the jet fuel, which is crazy, right? Also the problem is the American tanks are, I'll unplug it. There we go. I've got I'll use my TikTok mic now. It's fine. I mean, my iPad mic, it'll be okay. So the German tanks use diesel fuel. The American tanks use jet fuel. The American tanks use 50% more fuel than the German tanks. 50% more fuel. Is that insane? I mean, insanity. Okay. So that's a big problem there. The taking care of the tanks, much more complicated than maintaining, repairing, much more complicated with the American tanks than the German tanks. And one really big advantage, and I was reading a little bit more about this before coming on with you guys tonight, because there are, God, anywhere from 11 to maybe 14 countries in Europe that are using the German tanks. There's no way to put the mic back in, guys, so you're out of luck. Once it's unplugged for the show, so sorry about that. But sorry, I get off track and then I forget the German tanks. Oh shoot, I was going to tell you one more thing about the German tanks and the American tanks. Oh yeah, because the German tanks are in so many countries, okay, like 14 countries, say, there's a much greater pool to choose from in terms of offering the tanks. So in other words, if the Americans are providing, say, thank you, Andrew, for the hat there. If the Americans, let's say whoever it is, has to, Ukraine needs 200 to 300 tanks. Okay. Let's say that. The American tanks would all have to come from America. So we would have to provide 200 tanks. If the Germans and the 13 or 14 other countries were providing tanks, you could split those 200 tanks among 14 countries. That would be what, 12, 13, 14 tanks a country. It's a lot easier for one country to give 13 tanks than for one country to give 200 tanks. Second issue, and this is a big one. We've got 14 countries in Europe, I guess 15 if you count Germany, more or less, 14 countries in Europe, because these are countries that already have the German tanks, who know how to operate the German tanks. They know how to repair the German tanks. And here's the kicker, they know how to train the Ukrainians on how to use those tanks. You do not have to rely on just one country for the training. We can have the training come from 14 different countries if we need to, right? We can have spare parts come from 14 different countries. It just is easier across the board and more efficient to use the German tanks. Anyway, what happened today is, I always keep saying it's the NATO countries, but it wasn't the NATO countries. It was beyond that. It was the whole coalition of 50 or so countries. NATO only has 30 countries. There were 50 countries represented today at this meeting in Germany of allies united to defend Ukraine, right? At this meeting, we were hoping they could finally get the Germans on board to approve sending the German tanks. Now, the issue with the German tanks was multi-leveled here. One level was, sure, it might be nice if we could get the Germans themselves to send German tanks, but that's not really necessary. The Germans, all we need the Germans to do is approve everyone else sending the tanks. The way it works when you're selling arms, right? Selling weapons around the world. And this makes sense. If I've got weapons, I'm America, and I'm selling to, I don't know, Germany, whoever. I sell Germany a bunch of my tanks. I don't want Germany selling those American tanks to God knows who, right? To Libya, to South America, I don't know, whoever, right? I want to be able to say that I get to choose who my weapons go to. So most countries, Switzerland does this, America does this, Germany does this. When we sell weapons around the world, part of the contract says that you cannot give those weapons to anybody, to any other country, without checking with me first. So we've got a number of European countries, Poland and Finland to start with, but also, and I was going to tell you really quick, Czech Republic and Slovakia as well, have all said they would love to offer some of their German tanks to Ukraine. They've got to get permission from Germany first, according to the contract they signed with Germany. Now, sure, they could just screw Germany over and say, what are you going to do? Sue us? But what happens then? Then Germany turns around and says, fine, but if you're not going to abide by the contract, we're not going to send you any more weapons, right? We're not going to sell you anymore. Thank you, Harold, for the hat. So you can get you get why it's in the interests of everybody everybody of the people buying the weapons to, in principle, abide by the German request to let the Germans decide. In any case, the Germans have not decided. The Germans have said America has to give tanks first, or at least with us. Part of what's annoying about that is previously the Germans had said, we will give tanks, but we will be the second country to give tanks. We don't want to be the first country. Somebody else has to go first and give tanks to Ukraine, and then the proud German people would be happy to provide tanks. So what happens? France turns around and says, okay, we'll send you some of our light tanks, and France is doing it. The next week, the Brits turn around. The British government turns around and goes, okay, we'll send you 12 or 14 of our Challenger 2 tanks. So now we've got 2 European countries saying, we'll send tanks. The Germans said they didn't want to be first. They were waiting for someone to go first. So the French and the Brits go first, and the Germans turn around and go, well, I know we said we were only waiting for someone else to go first, but now we've changed our mind. Now we want the Americans to give the Americans Abrams tank at the same time we give our tanks. So the Germans changed their whole story. And this is part of the reason I feel like it's very disingenuous and dishonest of the Germans, because their story keeps changing. I mean, I could handle some of the German argument. I think, I guess there's strength in numbers, right? If you're saying, okay, the American tanks go at the same time the German tanks go, I guess. But it also strikes me as, a nuance without a difference, as we say in the law, because, I mean, really, the Russians are going to get mad at the Germans, but they're not going to get mad at the Germans if we throw in 5 Abrams tanks as well. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, if the Germans are going, if Russia is going to nuke Germany for approving 200 tanks going to Ukraine, they're not going to nuke Germany because we throw in 5 American tanks as well. I mean, first of all, they're not going to nuke Germany anyway. But you get what I mean? There's a faulty logic to this whole thing that makes me say, "Oh, Arifa, I don't think I've seen you in a while. Good to see you again. I always remember your name because it's a cool name." Thank you for that. In any case, makes me a little upset. So sorry, we had a question from Cliff Wolf. I just wanted to get through the initial rant. I've got more about the Germans and the tanks, but Cliff Wolf has a super chat question. Can't the USA pressure Saudi Arabia to supply diesel fuel to Ukraine for free? Saudi Arabia just hasn't cooperated with us on Ukraine. Well, okay, a couple problems here. How does that fuel even get there? Okay. The Russians we'll get out the handy dandy map. Ukraine is landlocked. The only way, the best way to get fuel to Ukraine is going to be by sea, I would imagine, right? And that's got to come through the Mediterranean, through the straits down here, the Bosporus, right? Where Turkey, and Istanbul is right on both sides of the Bosporus. You go, you go through Greece. Greece is on the left. Turkey's on the right. You go through the Bosporus, and then you come through here. And you come to Ukraine. The problem is, this is the area the Russians have been threatening to blow up all the Ukrainian ships. This is the area where for months the Ukrainians couldn't even export grain because the Russians were threatening to blow up the ships. And finally, with the help of the United Nations and Turkey, I'll admit Turkey did a good job on this one, the Ukrainians have been able to export grain again. But that agreement does not give permission for the Ukrainians to import oil. So the danger is that the Russians would torpedo it. Now, having said that, this is where, again, I think we should have called the Russians out on a lot of this stuff. If the Russians, the Russians are going to torpedo an oil tanker here. Guess what's around here? Not only do you have Romania, and other countries which they may not want to do this to, you've got Russia itself is right here. So the oil very easily could go up on Russian shores. You've also got Turkey. Russia has been very fortunate that Turkey is kind of playing both sides to a degree here. Um, the Turks are not going to be really happy if Russia throws a massive oil spill on Turkish land. All right. Any case, let me go. There was another question from Paul here. There it is. Make sure Paul was the only one. Okay. Paul Gray, is there anything stopping Poland or others starting to train Ukrainian personnel to use the Leopards in anticipation of these tanks being sent? Good question, Paul, because that is exactly what appears to have happened today. Ukraine's, I think it was their defense minister. I've got it down here. Ukrainian Defense Minister Reznikov said today that the summit led to an optimistic breakthrough where countries that have Leopard 2 tanks in service agreed to start training courses for Ukrainian tank crews on the tanks. Now, that's a huge, actually, first of all, I'm impressed that you came up with that because that's exactly what they did today. That is actually a big deal because the biggest problem happening right now with these tanks is that Russia, pretty much the conventional wisdom is that Russia is planning a massive attack on Ukraine come the spring, a big counteroffensive. Obviously, Russia's attacking Ukraine every day. We know that. But they're planning on potentially taking, they recruited 300,000 new men. They drafted 300,000 new men. They only threw 100,000 or so of the men into Ukraine. So they've got 200,000 of them kind of sitting there. This is the number I heard today. 200,000 new Russian troops are sitting there, and they've actually been, in principle, they've been training them. We know Russian training isn't that good. Nonetheless, the Russians want to take these 200,000 new men and basically launch a massive attack in the spring. That attack, I was hearing the other day on Sky News, could come as early as the end of March or early April. The end of March, early April, today is Friday, January 20th. The end of March, early April is going to be 9-10 weeks from now. Thank you, Alan John, for the hat. 9 or 10 weeks from now. Okay. Well, how long do you think it takes to train Ukrainians on using these tanks? And by using them, I don't just mean driving the tanks. Thank you. Nothing for you. I appreciate the gift there. I don't just mean driving the tanks and firing them. I mean the engineering side, the logistics side, right? The repairing of the tanks, all this kind of stuff. Well, the estimates I've seen are at a minimum, it'll take 10 weeks to train the Ukrainians on these tanks and then to get the tanks there. Now, getting the tanks isn't as big a problem. Training is a problem. 10 weeks is exactly when we are worried about the Russian offensive beginning, right? So the concern is that 10 weeks is an expedited training. That is 10 weeks is taking into account how brilliant the Ukrainians are. Okay, how earnest they are and how smart they are at doing this stuff. That means already these tanks could arrive. Yep, I saw my nephew's letting me know that Ruben Gallego, who's a congressman we like, just announced for the U.S. Senate against Kirsten Gillibrand, which I knew he was going to announce today. He's a good guy. I got thrown off. He threw me off on Gallego. Come on, Anthony, don't throw me off here. So already, if the tanks were announced today, okay, they might not arrive, and the training, arriving is less a problem. The training might not be complete for 10 weeks. That means April 1st, maybe even April 7th would be the earliest the Ukrainian can use the tanks. What happens if the Russians start the war at the end of March, a week or two before that arrives? Then the Ukrainians don't have tanks in place and the Russians have already started, right? So the interesting thing with the training, though, if in fact they're going to start the training now, which would be great, that pushes the clock back. That gives us more time to basically lobby the Germans to get their act together and to help. And I don't know how long, but my guess is going to be, does it take 4 weeks to get the German tanks in place? I mean, mind you, the German tanks are coming from Poland, for example. Poland's right next door, right? Finland's a little farther away, but not bad. You've got a lot of German tanks are in Europe. That is a lot easier than getting them from America. So anyway, bottom line, I hope I'm explaining this well. Bottom line is, by starting the training now, even though the issue of the tanks themselves has not been resolved, it gives us the opportunity that if Germany comes around even as late as maybe March 1st, I'm making up this date, but March 1st, we can still, in 2 to 3 weeks, get the German tanks there. So that is a good thing. I'm glad to hear that. Let me see here. Let me see a couple different things here. Oh, I was going to mention really quick. I forgot to mention to you guys tomorrow morning for TikTokers. I am going to have my coffee talk, as I call it. Thank you, NATObot, for that. I appreciate that. I've got my coffee talk, which is my chat I do for the paid TikTok subscribers as a thank you. We're going to do it Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So that's tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time. You just have to come to TikTok. I will launch this and only the subscribers can join. And on Sunday, I'll be doing the same thing for the Discord VIPs, the paid subscribers we have on Discord. And you can go on Discord, 11 a.m., and look for the VIP section, and you'll see it there. So just to remind folks, let me see. I've been jumping around the way I had the topics written out. So I want to make sure. Oh, the polls. So this was interesting. So German polls. There's been talk about the fact that the German people were not necessarily on board with these tanks going to Ukraine. And okay, that's, fair enough. Well, I forget Deutsche Welle, a big German publication, very respectable, had put out the polling numbers showing that the Germans were pretty much against giving Ukraine these tanks. Well, they issued a correction. The Germans are against giving Germany giving German tanks. The German people are for Germany allowing other countries to provide German tanks, which is what the Ukrainians want. Listen to these poll numbers. Should Germany deliver Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine? No, 43%. Yes, 39%. That's very close, frankly, but nonetheless, no is larger than the yes, but it's very close. It's 4%. Then you ask them, should Germany approve deliveries of Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine by other countries? Yes, 47%. No, 38%. So now the margin grows significantly. And even though it's a plurality, meaning it's below 50%, it's the largest number, 47% to 38%. So this certainly gives the German government more cover to at least approve the other tanks going. Now, again, the issue here comes with why is the German government refusing to do this? I don't think any of us know outright. We've talked about this before. Is it that the German government is worried about German business dealings with Russia in the future, right? Possibly, right? Is it that, one argument that's been floated around that's kind of annoying me actually is the moral argument that, and I mean, okay, I am not German. I have no idea what it is like to be Germany and have the baggage of World War II. Okay. Now it's self-inflicted baggage, of course. But the point is, Germany has since World War II been required, but also self-imposed, not getting involved in wars and things. Okay. Fair enough. But the moral argument being put out there, which is annoying to me, is that the Nazis sent German tanks into Ukraine to fight the Russians in World War II. So it would be very uncomfortable historically and morally for the Germans to again send German tanks into Ukraine to fight the Russians. And at first I heard that and I was like, then I thought about it. And it's really kind of an offensive argument. Think about this. The Germans did not send German tanks to fight the Russians in Ukraine in World War II. The Germans sent German tanks to fight the Soviets in World War II. Okay? Who were the Soviets? The Soviets weren't just the Russians. The Soviets were made up of 15 countries. Who were one of those countries that the Germans attacked in World War II using German tanks? The Ukrainians. When the Germans attacked the Soviets in Ukraine, they were attacking Ukrainians in Ukraine. They weren't just attacking Russians. So if the Germans want to play this moral game of, German tanks attacked the Soviets in World War II in Ukraine, so we don't want to attack the Russians this time. Well, actually, you attacked Ukrainians in World War II in Ukraine. So wouldn't defending Ukrainians now with your tanks be actually turning history on its head? Right? Wouldn't it be the most moral of things you could do? I mean, again, we're playing word games here, but it ticks me off because the moral argument is basically BS, basically. And it sounds to me like someone is trying to come up with an after the fact argument to justify something that's screwed up. Sorry, Elise has a comment. Thank you, Elise, for the super chat. Germany's plan in World War II was to deport, starve, or enslave most of Ukraine. I think the moral argument favors helping Ukraine now. Well, that's the thing. I mean, the Germans are more looking for my shoes as I'm talking to you guys. The Germans seem more worried about about the Russians than they do the Ukrainians. Like, if you invoke World War II, I mean, then your lesson from World War II is, okay, the Germans were really bad to two countries. One of those countries is today committing genocide. One of those countries is a victim of genocide. Who do the Germans side with? The Germans, right, who were the genocidal power in World War II. Who do the Germans side with in terms of this moral argument? The country that's committing genocide. Some people might say that is a moral problem. No, and I don't mean to get on the Germans' case, but I do in this case. I mean, Jesus Christ, what is wrong with these people? Yes, so I'm with you, Elise. All right. Oh, let me tell you really quick too. So just to remind folks, I was mentioning I've got the Discord. What was I saying? Sunday at 11 a.m. We will do our VIP chat for the Discord. It's discord.aravosis.com. The easiest way to find all of my links is just go to my profile on TikTok and you'll see the Linktree links. Click it. They're all there. YouTube, you've got my aravosis.com link there. Use that. Now, one thing we do on the Discord, just to tell you guys really quick, as I told you, I've been doing this for free since the war broke out. Actually, but I think it was the second week of the war. It was around the beginning of March. And I thought, let's do one of these lives that TikTok lets you do. People liked it. And I remember people saying to me, same time tomorrow? And I was like, same time tomorrow? Are you insane? Sunday is 11 a.m. Eastern time for the Discord. Saturday is 10 a.m. Eastern time for TikTok. And I was like, are you out of your mind? I'm not doing this tomorrow. I'm exhausted. Well, I did it the next day. It was really, I say fun, meaning it was a great crowd. We had great interaction. At this point, I was only doing TikTok, and it was wonderful, the kind of interaction we were getting. So I was like, you know what? Let's do this. So for it probably 5 months at least, I was doing this every day. I mean, 7 days a week, I was doing the show. Finally, I lost my voice like month 5. And I just thought, you know what? Okay, maybe 7 days a week is too much. So now I do 5 days a week. But I've been doing it for free. But I want to, but I've been doing it full time. So your guys' gifts have been paying me. Literally, you've been supporting paying my bills. Thank you, Hazel, for that, and spouse of. But I was going to tell you, one of the cool things we've been doing to raise money, but it's also been helping Ukraine and been just a lot of fun. We've been doing fundraisers. I've been doing fundraisers on TikTok and YouTube, and we've raised $80,000. And this is money that you guys donated directly. I did not take a dime of the money. 100% went to Ukraine. And I mean, I've got the list. I actually have to do a video, I think, going through the list of everything we've done now. I mean, we bought generators for troops at the front. We bought cars. We bought a bus. We bought a bus that evacuated people from Mariupol, that secretly evacuated Ukrainians from Mariupol when it was occupied by the Russians. I mean, amazing stuff. We gifts for kids, gifts and supplies for people with disabilities, gifts for kids at Christmas, you name it. Anyway, but the bottom line is, one of the cool things we do on Discord, I don't mean to go on too much of a tangent here, is we've got our auctions. And the auctions are really cool on Discord because I've gotten really cool stuff from Ukraine that my friend Vlad there has been getting for us. And lately, the coolest thing I got the other day, and I will show you again, and I'm auctioning this off. This week's auction is only for VIP members who are the paying members, but next week I will make this a second auction available for everybody. I love this. These are, thank you, Dead Ike, for the Moon Meteor. These are pieces of a Russian fighter jet that were shot down over Ukraine in August. Very cool. Comes from a Ukrainian charity. I'll show you guys. Comes from a Ukrainian charity that's been raising money for the military. They were able to get their hands on this. Vlad knows the woman who runs the charity. So he says she's the real deal. And we bought several. They come in a really cool little box and everything. And, sort of cute little box, the whole thing, a little pamphlet explaining what they are, where it was shot down, orc busters. Because the Ukrainians, this is kind of funny, actually. The Ukrainians call the Russian troops orcs, like the orcs from Harry. I was going to say Harry. Thank you, Min Crossing. I was going to say Harry Potter, not from Harry Potter, from Lord of the Rings. They literally call them the orcs from Lord of the Rings, which is totally cool. So I thought that was kind of neat. Any case, oh yeah, we've also got bracelets from the Azovstal steel plant that the Ukrainian government produced. Anyway, we've got a lot of cool stuff in the auction. So if you guys can help out, I appreciate it. Again, go to the link, aravosis.com, go to the link in my profile. You'll find all my stuff. All right, let me keep going here because I've got, boy, a lot more news, but I knew there was going to be a lot of news today. So let me see here. Let me see. Okay. Zelensky's kind of ticked off at the Germans today. No surprise. He told German television today, "You're adults. You can talk for 6 months, but people here die every day. If you can give Leopard tanks, then do it. It's not like they'll attack Russia. We're just defending ourselves." But this has been a common refrain from the European, from the Ukrainians, because they've kind of been like, what are you guys doing? Right? Like all of this, dickering back and forth kind of thing. When the Ukrainians have really, this is a big deal, obviously, for Ukraine. It's life or death and whatever. Sometimes I feel like we're not taking this seriously. Marion Hagler, my friend Marion, says, thank you for making it a super chat, Marion. Seems unstrategic for NATO countries to debate tanks so publicly. We were talking about this the other day. That's really interesting, Marion, that you mentioned that. Maybe it's a ruse. Perhaps tanks have already been sent and dialogue is to confuse the Russians as to who is sending tanks and who is not. Crazy to think this. I was wondering about that, because I was trying to think what else it was today that had me wondering. I guess, thank you, Chaz, for the TikTok gift. Germany's taking a hell of a hit, okay? Germany's taking a hell of a hit. If Germany is doing this, then I will, eat my hat, so to speak, because that would be amazing if this is what Germany's doing. Doing this stuff publicly is not helping. Having said that, when we've done it publicly before, it seems to have been real. For example, certainly the idiocy over those MiG fighter jets. Remember when the Poles wanted to provide MiG fighter jets to Ukraine back like the first month or two of the war? Thank you, Avery, for that. Sasha, I can't play with you right now. Come on in. Come here. My dog is in my bedroom making noises, trying to get me to come play. Thank you, Timothy, for the hat. She cracks me up. I have the most talkative dog on the planet, but she's in the other room going, which to her means that's her way of saying, come on. Excuse me. So we know the MiG thing was public and it was a disaster. It was a disaster. What was not public, Bulgaria, we were told. Oh, Bulgaria. Bulgaria said they will help repair Ukrainian tanks and because Ukrainians do have Soviet tanks. They don't have Western tanks, but they've got Soviet tanks. They said, thank you, Carlos, for the gift, by the way. They said, the Bulgarians said, we'll help repair tanks, but we're just not in a position. Thank you, Spirits here. We're just not in a position to actually give weapons to Ukraine. That would go too far, whatever. Well, what we just found out this week is the Bulgarians provided, I think this is the correct amount. Thank you, Hazel, for that. I think the correct amount is the Bulgarians provided like a third of the artillery shells that Ukraine had been given, like for the first 10 months of the war, came from Bulgaria secretly. And the whole time Bulgaria pretended publicly like they weren't giving Ukraine anything, but they would repair tanks if Ukraine needed it. That was the most they could do. So that's interesting. That means there are. Hello, dog. You want to go outside? All right, go outside a bit. That means that there are that we are doing some disinformation. I hope to God you're right, Miriam. I would say you're right. This would be. I hope to God you're right. I don't know whether 50 countries can pull this off because you had 50 countries represented today at that meeting in Germany. Could you really pull it off? Thank you, Cheryl. Could you really pull it off with 50 countries? I don't know. That's interesting, though. Yeah. I hope to God it's true. And it would be brilliant if it were true. And again, I will join you all in praising Germany like nobody's business. Thank you, Annie, for that. Germany like nobody's business if it's true. What else we got here? Oops. Well, of course you want to come back in. This is your life, isn't it? But she's a cat. Let me go out. Let me come in. Let me go out. Let me come in. The U.S. is advising. This came out today too in the news. It was a little weird. The U.S. is advising Ukraine to wait on any future offensives until all the weapons who've been promised, like this week, are in country. And that's not a bad idea. I mean, there were a lot of good weapons promised this week. The U.S. promised 59 Bradley fighting vehicles. Thank you, now, Mikey. Which are a big deal. Also, these Stryker armored personnel carriers that I was reading about today that apparently, but there's like 18 versions of them, so it's not quite clear which one. So there is a lot, I've got on my list here. The Netherlands has now promised 2 Patriot missile batteries. Initially, they promised 1. Now they promised 2, which is great. I mean, I don't even have the list. Yesterday, I went through it with you guys. There were literally 11 European countries that stepped up yesterday, which was amazing, and promised weapons to Ukraine. So America, the U.S. was advising the Ukrainians to maybe hold off. No, it was Sweden. It was everybody. Yeah, I mean, there was everybody. I don't even have the list in front of me. But they were advising the Ukrainians to at least hold off if the Ukrainians are planning an offensive, is what they were saying. Not the Russian one, but if the Ukrainians are planning one, to at least hold off until we can get these weapons in place. Now, having said that, getting back to Marion's point, why would the Americans say that publicly? Think about it, right? Why would we tell the Ukrainians publicly, if you can hold off attacking Russia, please do until all our weapons are there, right? Why wouldn't you tell the Ukrainians privately? You wouldn't want to signal to the Russians that the Ukrainians aren't attacking anytime soon, right? The only reason you would want to publicly signal to the Russians that, please, Ukraine, hold off a while, is because the Ukrainians are planning to attack any day now, right? Or almost any day now. So that itself could also be misinformation putting out by our side to hide the fact that the Ukrainians are planning something. Maybe. Just an idea, but who knows? Germany did announce 1 billion euros in military aid package for the spring. I figured since we're trashing the Germans, we at least need to get that out. Other news today about the Wagner Group. I won't go through all of it, but during question and answer, if people want, we can talk about it. The Wagner Group is the Russian mercenary group, soldiers for hire, and for basically you pay them and they fight for you. They do a lot of work in Africa with the government of Mali and others. They're murderers. They're horrific. The Americans today designated Wagner a transnational criminal organization. They also released proof that the Wagner Group was buying artillery shells from North Korea. I looked up in the New York Times as to what the legal significance of this was. The Times says designating Wagner as a transnational criminal organization will freeze the company's assets in the U.S. and ban Americans from providing money, goods, or services to the group. Okay, I don't know how many Americans were providing Russian mercenary groups with money and aid. I also don't know how much money they've got in the U.S., but it's interesting at least. It's not the worst thing ever. I know I'm going late on the news here, but I don't care. I'm going to tell you guys this. I'm not going to go through the details. There is a really good story in Politico, a very good American political press here, about how the Wagner Group is expanding its mining operations in Africa to bring in millions to prop up its work and to prop up the Russian government. Okay. Their mining profits are soaring to almost $1 billion now. Okay. This Wagner Group. And what I was thinking about that is we were talking the other day about why it is that the Russians are fighting so heavily in Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine. Bakhmut and the suburb Soledar are pretty much here where my finger is, okay, eastern Ukraine. And the fight has been mostly the Wagner Group fighting there. It's been the Ukrainian military, the Russian military too, but it's mostly been the mercenaries that are doing it. And we kept saying why? Because the military experts will tell you that Bakhmut, it's okay. It's just not the most important place for the Russians to be spending this much time fighting for. The Russians have lost like 5,000 men. 5,000 men killed, 10,000 men injured, at least, for 6 months fighting for this stupid town that strategically just isn't worth that many dead. But they're doing it anyway. We were talking last week, Deborah just said on YouTube, bingo, we were talking last week about how Bakhmut does contain salt and gypsum mimes. I keep saying mimes. Somebody has to do a political cartoon of that. the secret mimes of Bakhmut. salt and gypsum mines. And we were wondering if that was the reason. Thank you, Hazel, for the hat there. If that was part of it, was, you know, Bach was Wagner basically looking at some kind of commercial enterprise. Very interesting. So that could be part of the reason they're doing this, because they've got, I mean, they really are a criminal. They remind me of mafia, really, right? They've got the whole grift down. I mean, they're soldiers for hire, but they also invest in mines, you know, minerals or whatever, and use the mine money to then provide for their weapons. And like this whole, it's a whole criminal enterprise. I mean, it's fascinating. It's horrible, but it's fascinating at the same time. Let me see here. All right, let me see. So I wanted to bring that up because I thought that was important. And Finland is going to be providing 400 million euros in a new military package to Ukraine. The Netherlands, I mentioned, is going to be providing 2 Patriots now. And then finally, there was a weird, I think it's a weird story. There was a weird story. I saw somebody on TikTok mention this earlier, that the Netherlands is considering supplying Ukraine with American F-16 aircraft. Same problem kicks in. The Dutch cannot provide American military aircraft to Ukraine. It doesn't work that way. The Americans would have to approve it, and I don't think there's any chance in hell. Thank you, Nathan, for the TikTok gift. I don't think there's a chance in hell of Americans providing American F-16s to Ukraine. I just found that weird. There's the whole, but it was a weird comment to make. I guess maybe the idea, here's the idea. I was just going to say, maybe the idea here is they're offering and they're saying, look, we should be, okay, I'm making an argument for the Dutch here. If we, the Dutch, we would be willing to give Ukraine our F-16s. If we're willing to do that, can't Germany at least give Ukraine some of its tanks, right? It may be a trial balloon, but it also may be trying to expand the window in terms of, look, lots of us are willing to give Ukraine even better weapons than those stupid German tanks. But, and we're happy to do it. If the US says the word, we'll do it. Why won't Germany do it too? Maybe that's it. That's all I can figure. Because I thought it was kind of weird, you know, because also part of the problem is you invite the US going, because now the US will get asked about it. And what does the US do? You know, there's no way the American government wants to give F-16s. I don't think so. But who knows? All right, guys, let's switch over to the Q&A section. I can go a little bit late because the news went long today, but because we did have a lot of news. Also, I do have a Patreon. So if you want to check that out too, you can go to patreon.com/Aravosis. You can find it via aravosis.com for all of you guys over there. And for you folks, you can find my Patreon as well via my profile on TikTok. Click the Linktree link. Patreon's on there. But Patreon is a nice way as well that you can help out me or other creators. Basically, it's a way of giving a donation every month. You know, $5, $10, $2, whatever you want. You can do it in euros as well. You can do it every month, and it's a nice way of setting up basically an income stream for creators. So like we know we've got a set amount of income coming in each month. I mean, the gifts here are great anyway, and I appreciate it. And please keep them. The gifts have been quite helpful actually from you guys. So thank you. But do check out the Patreon if you've been watching for a while and you like what I do. I am doing it full time. Nobody's paying me other than you guys. So consider it. Patreon.com/Aravosis. All right, let's jump and go to here. Just looking here. All right, let me look. Oh, thank you, Truthful, for the hat. Let me pull up my my TikTok on here. Thank you, what, Nancy? That's one of my favorite ones. Is the universe? I keep saying the universe. It's not the universe. It's the galaxy. It's the Milky. I'm assuming it's the Milky Way. Thank you for that. And Ming Crossing for the rainbow kite. All right, Q&A. Just to remind folks, you can submit questions obviously in YouTube and everywhere at the bottom of the screen. For TikTokers, go to the Q&A link. You can submit them on the screen here, but they kind of scroll by. The Q&A link is a little bit easier for me to see. All right, let's see here. Deep. The TPS for Ukrainians in the States. Oh, I'm not even up on that. I don't know. Someone's asking a question about, I think, exchange. Will the U.S. extend sort of I'm assuming this is sort of the special immigration status for Ukrainians. I'm sure it'll be extended. Absolutely. They're not going to just kick Ukrainians out or stop letting them in. There's no way. There's no way. If the war keeps going, they'll let you guys stay. There's no way that they would stop that. Copies is asking, have you seen Poland saying we will receive approval soon or do the good thing anyway? Yes, we talked about that the other day. Seems probable and no problem for Poland. The issue there is, so Poland had said yesterday, the Polish prime minister had said yesterday that basically, enough of the screwing around. If the Germans don't approve us sending the German tanks that we bought to Ukraine, we're just going to do it anyway. I did see a story maybe last night saying that if Poland does it, they might do it with like 2 tanks, like basically just to for the principle of it. 2 tanks is not going to make a difference. Maybe it's a start. Maybe, it's better than nothing. But the Ukrainians need, 100 to 200 tanks is what most people are saying. Most of the experts, a good 100 to 200. So, but that's the risk of doing it that way. Subscribe through Amazon and Twitch. Oh my God, I have no idea. Amazon, there isn't even an Amazon thing to subscribe to, I think. There shouldn't be an Amazon thing. Amazon is simply a wish list, a gift list on Amazon. And Twitch is free. You can go on Twitch to watch me there, but Twitch is free. What else we got? Oops, I'm sorry. There was a... All right. Marion copies. Ben from the UK. Thank you, Ben, for the super chat question. Do you think the Russian threats of escalation that happened on Thursday prior to the meeting in Germany today influenced NATO or Germany's decisions on the tanks today? So the Russians put out a lot of threats, more nuclear war threats, the spokesman, lots of different Russians, Medvedev, lots of Russians. Lavrov, the foreign minister, very serious, like what we're going to do. Who knows what'll happen to Europe if you give more weapons. It's typical. I saw, I forgot who it was today on CNN. Oh, actually it was William Cohen, who's a former Secretary of Defense under Bill Clinton, but he was a Republican senator. So it's interesting because Bill Clinton basically picked a Republican to be his Secretary of Defense. So Cohen is a strong Republican background in military affairs. And Cohen was there on TV today and he said, about the Russian statement. He said, basically, they're, thank you, Paramarine, for that. Basically, they're holding Ukraine hostage and they're holding Europe hostage. And they're saying, if you don't let us win this war, we're going to, unleash unholy hell on all of Europe. Because you can't give in to those kind of threats. Not to mention, it's not like, oh, well, then I guess we better let Russia win and Russia goes away. They're not going away, right? If Russia wins this war, if Russia gets 1 inch of Ukrainian land out of this war, the war will have been worth it to them, and it'll send the message that Russia should do it again in the future, right? So, it's the thing that I think you have to worry about is the Russians. I guarantee you the Russians got on the phone with the Germans and read them an earful of threats. I think they absolutely did. The question is, what did they threaten? And did it matter to the Germans? I don't know. Partially, I guess, to answer your question, in terms of what impact it had specifically on the Germans, what is motivating the Germans? I don't think we really know. The U.S. government probably knows, but publicly, we don't know what is motivating the Germans. We don't know why the Germans are being such shits about this. If we knew that, then we would know, is it fear of the Russians? Is it fear of Russian business contracts? Is it more generally political stuff? Because I guess the SDP in Germany, traditionally been closer to the Russians. Is it that Scholz is actually more worried about his own political party? Is that the problem? Is it the poll numbers in Germany that the country is still divided 50-50 and therefore if that's the issue, then he doesn't really care about what the Russians are saying. If he's worried about German business getting a deal in Russia afterwards, then he cares. If he's really worried about nuclear war, okay. But if he's worried about nuclear war, give me a break. I just think that's just, at this point, we're at the point now where if there's a nuclear war, everyone's involved, which is why a nuclear war isn't going to happen, as far as I'm concerned. But But no, I don't think we know until we can figure out what's motivating the Germans. Deep. All right, let me pull up TikTok questions again. All right, hang on a second. Oh, thank you, that Hazel. That's a nice one, that Ferris wheel. I don't see that one very often. Thank you for that. That's a nice one. All right, hang on. Is this I read the Russians threatened to counter with T-14 tanks, which have not yet been used. Is that even true? They've threatened it. I don't recall whether the tank. Now, mind you, it was only like 15 or something of these tanks. They're new Russian tanks. They're very scary. And what I was reading today was the tanks aren't even proven. The Russians don't have, I mean, literally, they have like a dozen or something, or 15 of these tanks. So they don't have that many of them. And what I read the other day about this was Russian commanders would be so distrustful of the tanks because they haven't been used yet that they likely wouldn't even use them. And that basically the Russians would bring the tanks out just as some kind of psychological thing, like, oh, scary, look at our tanks. But I love the part about the Russian commanders. The Russian commanders wouldn't even trust the tanks because they're new Russian tanks, right? I mean, they know their military. Some new piece of equipment that hasn't been tested, like, sure, it's going to work. I'm going to put my men in there to explode. So that is what's going on. But yeah, we don't know if they're even going to show up. That's an interesting question, Daniel. I'll get to you next. Otanbot is saying from Norway, right? What are the potential consequences for Germany's relationships with its allies and Ukraine if it does not agree to send tanks? Well, relationship with Ukraine, not great. I don't know that Germany cares. With the allies, the problem for Germany is, and I've been reading about this too the last couple of days, Germany has provided a lot of aid. I mean, Felix has been arguing this, and he was right. Germany has been providing a lot of aid to Ukraine. They're not getting credit for it because of all the games they play, right? Promising a weapon, not giving it, dilly-dallying. I mean, even with the Greeks early on, remember they were going to do something and then they backed out, and the Greeks were going to provide some weapons to Ukraine, and the Germans said, well, that'll take 6 months. It's just been game after game after game that has been undercutting the fact that the Germans have apparently done some good stuff. The Germans are convincing people like me that never paid much attention to Germany that the government's kind of shitty and they can't be trusted. I mean, and that's the biggest risk, I think, for the Germans right now. There was I don't remember, I don't think I put it on here. There was a great quote. Oh, I don't have it here. There was a great quote from a Finnish defense expert, basically talking about the German sales. And he said weapon sales. And he said, we can't trust these people anymore. Who knows what they're going to do? He goes, they're literally more worried about our enemy than they are about our allies. And we're going to buy weapons from them when we may need spare parts for those weapons or armaments for those weapons. And we're relying on a country that clearly isn't comfortable providing these things when they're needed. Right. I mean, that's what worries me with this. For example, Poland, Finland goes to war. Actually, Finland raises I wasn't even thinking of this. What the Finnish defense expert was probably talking about is Finland's not a member of NATO yet. What if the Russians attack Finland? Finland has German tanks. They need more of those German tanks. They need spare parts for they're at war with Russia now. They need spare parts for their German tanks. They need more whatever weapons the tanks have. They need more of the ammunition for the tanks. They can't get it from other countries because Germany has to approve it. And Germany, well, Finland and Germany, they're not a member of NATO. And right, we don't know if we want our tanks being used against the Russians, so we'll let you use the tanks you have, but we're not going to give you any more ammunition. I mean, that's the kind of BS. I don't trust the Germans anymore. I was writing on Twitter earlier, the Germans have become the stereotype of the French. The French had this stereotype of being unreliable, kind of, weak in the knees, wishy-washy. And the French have been pretty good. I mean, Macron's been kind of goofy with his love affair with Putin, but the French have been pretty good. I'm not thrilled with what's going on with the Germans right now. So that's the biggest risk for the Germans, I think, is the other thing I'll say real quick. I've seen talk about this, that the Germans are sort of the leaders of Europe now that Britain left the EU. It's the French and the Germans, but the Germans are, I'm pretty sure, the bigger economy, right? And that scared me. I wasn't thrilled with France being the leader of Europe because I worry about wishy-washiness, but Germany now, there isn't a chance. If the concern is Russia, a renewed Russia, and the threat it poses to Europe, the last thing we need is the Germans running the ship, because we know it's going to be appeasement, I think. I mean, again, not 100% because the Germans have provided a lot of weapons, but when push comes to shove with this tank situation, the Germans are caving. This is the most pivotal battle of the war is going to be happening this spring, and so far the Germans are screwing it up. So anyway, no, it pisses me off. I didn't feel this way about the Germans before. That's what impact the German stuff is having. It's affecting, and a lot of the people I read too. A lot of folks that are defense experts or foreign policy experts, they don't trust the Germans anymore. It's really shitty. Yeah. Anyway, Danielle. Yes, I did see this. Interesting. So Lindsey Graham, American senator, Republican, conservative, Donald Trump fan, kind of weird. Lindsey Graham is the one who hated Donald Trump in 2015 and now is Donald Trump's biggest defender. And then wrote Donald Trump off after the insurrection, but now is defending Trump again. Graham, Graham. Anyway, he is in Ukraine today with two other American senators. I forget who the other ones were. But Graham's good because he's a big conservative senator, so that's very helpful. Big supporter of Ukraine. And Daniel's saying Lindsey Graham is interesting. He seems pretty enthused in his support for Ukraine. He is. He just posted, "I am tired of the." Oh, thank you, Bonnie, for the hat. "I am tired of the shit show surrounding who is going to send tanks and when." And then Daniel says, "Can someone like him come through for ATACMS?" Well, no, because he can't do it. I mean, they can't. In the end, it's the administration that decides to a degree. I mean, excuse me, Congress, it'd be very difficult. I mean, Congress would have to pass legislation tying the president's hands and saying because I worked in the Senate, the U.S. Senate, and I've written legislation. They would have to do something like, if the administration does not provide these weapons to Ukraine by this date, the Defense Department budget is cut 10% or something like that, right? That's how Congress could try to force Biden to do this. The problem is Democrats run the U.S. Senate. They're not going to do that to Biden. That would be too rude. Republicans run the House, but the good Republicans on Ukraine are in the Senate. The MAGA Republicans run the House, and those guys, a lot of them hate Ukraine because they're pro-Putin. I mean, they're America lasters basically, but they're pro-Putin. So, it's there's no way he could force it. No, it's helpful though. But I guess the unfortunate thing is Graham is in the body, the Senate, that is already pretty darn good on Ukraine. Meaning, as I said, Mitch McConnell is great. Mitch McConnell is the top Republican in the U.S. Senate. McConnell is great on Ukraine. Absolutely fabulous. So the Senate Republicans are the normal Republicans on national security. The House Republicans are the MAGA guys who are cuckoo. So we could use somebody like Graham in the House as far as that goes. I saw this Tallinn Pledge thing, but I wasn't sure, Ben. I didn't really get the details on what it was. Is it they're planning on sending the tanks? I don't know. I just thought it was countries pledging to support Ukraine. So not well, the tanks, I mean, actually, Cliff, yeah, I had, as far as why the tanks are needed, I talked about this earlier. The tanks are needed because there is a huge offensive coming up. Offensive meaning, attack in essence, but a big attack, like a D-Day kind of attack. Oh, thank you, Flower Lady. That was the cool one you had the other day that I'd never seen before. Thank you for that. That was very cool and very generous of you, but very cool. So an offensive is like a big military operation, like D-Day, okay? Landing in Normandy, okay? So the concern is that the Russians are planning a huge offensive for this spring. End of March, early April, something like that. There is such concern that the American CIA director went to Ukraine, was it last week or was it the last couple of days? Last week, it was last week, to basically brief Zelensky on the intelligence we have on what Russia is planning next. I think the fact that he went to Ukraine to brief Zelensky on this means we are concerned. We've got some intelligence of something bad coming. Everyone seems to agree the Russians are planning a huge attack for the spring. Again, possibly the end of March, possibly early April. That huge attack, I mean, it's going to be huge. It's going to involve a lot of men. It could involve 200,000 more men than the Russians currently have, because of the Russians had the 300,000 men that they mobilized in September. They're using about 100,000, 200,000 they're not using. In principle, they're training them if they're smart, but they're not very smart. Nonetheless, they've still got 200,000 men to throw. And what the experts are saying is, in order to stop an offensive like that, you need tanks. Actually, I was watching General Hertling on TV today, a former American general, chief of the army in Europe, very good guy, very smart guy, a strong supporter of Ukraine. And Hertling was saying that Bradley fighting vehicles, incredibly important. Stryker armored personnel carriers, incredibly important. And he said, what we have provided Ukraine and the allies are providing Ukraine will make a huge difference. He said, but that you still need the tanks to round it out. Basically, that all of these things work together. And the military folks among us can tell you more. But this is, I'm assuming, like the combined arms phrase used in the military, where things work together. You need the ground troops, you need the tanks, you need the planes, you need the drones, you need the artillery, right? You've got all of these things working together in order to make a battle work. You can't just have some of them, but not the tanks. And Ukraine has lost a lot of its tanks because the Russians have blown them up. They're old, right? They're Soviet tanks. So these things go back 30, 40, 50 years, probably. They don't have spare parts because who's got Soviet tanks, right? The Europeans already gave most of their spares to Ukraine, the former Soviet states in the East, the former Soviet satellites. So ammunition, same thing. So Ukraine needs to start shifting over anyway to some of the Western weapons, but that's why there's a timing issue of the concern of this battle coming up end of March, early April. And as far as what that battle will look like, Ukraine will need tanks. So, all right, I'll do a little bit more and then we'll call it quits here. More questions on TikTok here. Sasha Rahela, we like Sasha. On TikTok, a very good Ukrainian guy, our Ukrainian friend on TikTok, mentioned Biden gave the green light to Ukraine to take Crimea back, quasi. All the countries meeting in Germany planning Ukraine offensive. True. What Sasha's referring to is there was an article maybe yesterday or the day before in the New York Times where basically U.S. officials are saying, sorry, a little chapstick for the lips. U.S. officials are saying that Biden was very concerned about the Ukrainians taking back Crimea. Crimea is the territory in Ukraine's territory in the south. The Russians invaded in 2014 and stole this territory. That was the beginning of the war. And they've pretty much been at war ever since. And then Russia did the big invasion last year, right? But they stole this back in 2014. Putin has put particular emphasis on Crimea. They've annexed it. He claims it's Russia. And the concern, I have not had this concern, but the concern Biden has had, among others, has been, at least from what we think, is, oh boy, it's one thing if the Ukrainians attack and try to take back the land that Putin stole this year. Putin is occupying this land in Ukraine this year. But if he goes after the land that he stole in 2014, Putin will really be pissed and he'll use nuclear weapons. What the New York Times article was saying is American officials have started to change their point of view. It's not unanimous yet, but the Biden administration is starting to change their point of view because they feel that Putin will never want to negotiate, right? Biden wants to get Ukraine and Putin negotiating. And Putin will never negotiate. Putin wants to take all of Ukraine and make it Russia and kill everybody that's left, right? Therefore, the only way to convince Putin to do this, we can go to Discord for a little bit afterwards. Yeah, Motec, we'll go to Discord a little after. The only way to convince Putin to do this is by threatening Crimea, by giving Ukraine the ability and the green light. Thank you, Louis, for the crown. I always say that's like the Ukrainian flowers crown, the spring flowers. By giving Ukraine the ability and also the green light, the okay to go after Crimea, and then have the Ukrainians actually take a stab at it and start succeeding is the only way to get Putin to go, okay, if we don't agree to something, we're going to lose Crimea entirely. So that's what, so Sasha is not wrong, but that's the more detailed explanation of what he's talking about. Yeah. And it's good. It's good. Because also what it means, thank you, Jerry, for the hat there. What it also means is that we are not as worried anymore about, Sasha's great. People on TikTok, Great CFI just put his link there. Go check him out. Follow him. He's from Ukraine, lives in New York, I think, at the moment. Very interesting guy. Obviously, Ukrainian, good guy. Has a lot of interesting information. But in any case, sorry, I'm getting off, not off topic. I'm getting like thrown off again. Let me. What else we got here? Oh, thank you, Zoe, for the hat there. Let me look for another TikTok question. Why does it seem like sanctions don't work as well as they should? The thing is, we all were hoping the sanctions would be more crushing on Russia from the beginning, right? Russia's economy shrank last year, but not very much if you believe the Russians, but at least from what people are saying, it maybe went down a few percentage points. Thank you, Happy Beach family, for the kite there. I don't think we know entirely how well the sanctions have worked. What I mean is clearly these were devastating. These came down like a ton of bricks on the Russian economy. We know that. We know that a lot of, not enough, but a lot of businesses pulled out of Russia, big businesses. We know even Russia's own, Americans profiting from the war. Well, they should, if they're American companies, just like German companies are profiting from the war if we use German tanks. And that's okay, because we don't live in a this is a nasty TikToker that somebody got rid of, which is good. We do not live in a communist system. So therefore, when tanks are bought, they have to be paid for. And that's okay, in the same way that I need to be paid, frankly, because all of us have got to pay our bills. So if you want good things for Ukraine, you got to support it. So, but I always love when people say stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, okay. I will say this: American government has spent a lot of money on Ukraine, and the American taxpayers have. So, it's benefiting America from a national security perspective, and that's why it's worth doing. But it's not like we're making money off of this. We're losing money on this, but that's okay, because we'd be spending a hell of a lot more money if we wanted to take down the Russian military. And Ukraine's doing it for us, frankly, and we should all be very thankful to Ukraine for doing that. Anyway, yeah. So sorry, Magic Photo Guy, you were saying the sanctions not working. Even the Russians were saying, the Russian central bank. Oh, thank you, James. We've got our whale. Give a wave, everybody. Thank you for that. The Russian central bank chief had said months ago that the Russian economy was in for trouble soon, that they were running out of spare parts for their planes, the commercial fleet, spare parts for, and by the way, the commercial fleet problems were going to start screwing up the deliveries in the country for commerce. So basically, the DHL, those kind of FedEx, those kind of services that the Russians still have their own version, they can't even work without planes, and the planes were breaking down and couldn't be repaired because they were Western planes, right? So you got that happening. The little anecdotes like Russian theaters. I put this story out last summer that I got from the Russian media, 3 different the top Russian papers and media outlets saying that Russian movie theaters cinemas have closed down all over Russia because 75% of their income came from Western movies, and now they can't get Western movies. And devastating impact on movie theaters. Well, guess what happens when Russian movie theaters get shut down? Russian shopping malls were also suffering because people would go to the movies and go shopping. They weren't going to the movies, so they weren't shopping in the mall, like for groceries or whatever else. Well, once those things shut down, what happened? The people working there lost their jobs. That's an impact on the Russian economy. So, the Russian government has been pumping a ton of money into their economy to keep it afloat. I have a hard time believing, with all the sanctions that are on Russia, that they can keep it going forever. I don't think they can. This has cost them this has cost the Russians a lot of money, but I'm with you. I would like to see a greater impact, but the economists say there actually has been a pretty significant impact. But you're right. It's not like the economy is cratering yet, but let's see. All right. Sorry. I don't want to go too long because if I'm going to go to the Discord for a little bit, if I'm going to go to the Discord, if I'm going to go to the Discord for a little bit, I don't want to go too much longer. You know what? Let me do a quick recap here, and then I'll go over to the Discord. All right, let's do that, guys. And then we'll call it quits. Because then I've got tomorrow morning. Remember, tomorrow morning, I'm looking at my notes here. Tomorrow morning, we're doing our TikTok coffee talk at Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. So that'll be for my TikTok subscribers, the paid subscribers on TikTok. The Discord VIPs, so the VIPs on Discord, the paying members on Discord, we will meet at Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Discord. And that'll be in the VIP channel. It'll say the voice chat or video chat or whatever the heck it says, but you'll see it at the bottom of the voice channel, the bottom of the VIP chat channel. All right, let's go. So the NATO meeting is over. Germany is still refusing to provide approval for the re-export of its tanks. Poland, Finland, Czech Republic, and Slovakia have said that they are all interested in sending German tanks to Ukraine. Plurality of Germans do in fact support permitting other countries to send Leopard tanks to Ukraine. That's significant. The big concern with the tanks is that the Russians, everyone thinks, are planning a massive offensive in the spring, possibly the end of March, possibly early April. And the concern is that thank you, Pooster. The concern is that the Ukrainians need to have these tanks in place and have the training done by the end of March so that they are ready for the Russian attack. Now, the one good side of this is supposedly a deal was reached today where the Germans said it's okay if the countries in Europe that have German tanks start training for those tanks with the Ukrainians. In other words, start training the Ukrainians on how to drive those tanks, how to maintain those tanks, right? Engineers training on how to take care of the tanks and fix them. The European countries can start doing that. So that's a very good point because that will, in other words, even if Germany doesn't decide for another month, that will help a lot because then Ukrainians are trained anyway to use the tanks and they only need to get the tanks in place. So that's a big deal. Zelensky's pissed off at the Germans today. Big surprise. Germany's, one of their claims is that there's a moral imperative about the Germans fought the Russians in World War II and it would just be wrong to fight the Russians again. It's just like, okay, whatever. The U.S. is advising Ukraine to wait on any future offensive until the latest weapons and training are in place. General Milley, I didn't get to this because we were zooming through the stories, but General Milley, the top American general, said today that it will be difficult for Ukraine to get all of its land back this year, but he does think he said he doesn't think Ukraine can get all of its land back this year, but that obviously includes Crimea. I think his point is the Russians are very well dug in, and it's going to take a lot of work for the Ukrainians to get their land back. But he did seem to imply that the Ukrainians would be able to make progress this year, so that's good. Germany announced a 1 billion euro spring military aid package for Ukraine. I then talked about the Wagner Group, the mercenary group. The U.S. designated Wagner a transnational criminal organization, which will let us freeze their assets in the U.S. and ban Americans from providing support for the group. The Wagner Group also has been involved in mining projects in Africa and is using the millions. Profits are getting close to 1 billion from their mining work, channeling that money back into their guns and everything for Ukraine, but also channeling it back to the Russian government to get around sanctions in essence. And I raised the point of, could that be why the Wagner Group is leading the charge against Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine? Because Bakhmut has got gypsum and salt mines. Other military aid, Finland is providing Ukraine with 400 million euros of a military aid package. The Netherlands has upped its promise of Patriot missiles to Ukraine from 1 to now 2 Patriot missile batteries. And then finally, there was a weird story in the Dutch press about the Netherlands considering supplying Ukraine with F-16 aircrafts. Thank you, Kanausi. And I thought that was a little weird just because the U.S. has got to approve it. So I wasn't quite sure why, Netherlands was sort of saying that publicly, but who knows? Ooh. All right, guys. All right, let's go. I'm going to head over to, I'm tired today. I'm going to head over to Discord. We'll hang out for a little bit. I may not hang out for too long. since I've got to do 2 more of these this weekend, my 2 chats. But thank you for joining. Thank you for the gifts. Thank you, mods, for all the crazy patrolling of everybody. I appreciate it. Yes, Callum's the newbie. Be nice to him. Sunday, I will be doing just a final reiteration here. Sunday morning, I will be doing thank you, Purnell. I will be doing a Discord VIP chat for the paying members of Discord Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time US. And tomorrow morning, Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time US, I will be doing a coffee talk, or a coffee talk as I call it, for the paid TikTok subscribers. So only they will be able to access it. All right, kids, let's call it a night. I'll go over to Discord, discord.aravosis.com, and we will continue there, but not for too long. Maybe 15 minutes, all right? Because I'm getting tired. I'm going to keep yawning at you guys. All right. Thank you, everybody. Good night, YouTubers at all. And then you guys are next.